Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanchez, Jim Jonas with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today we have one of my favorite people, Shelley Berkley, former United States Congresswoman and candidate for United States Senate. She was a legislator in the Nevada politics for years, and now she is CEO of Touro University. Jim, before we go to Miss Berkley, do you have any rants?
No, actually I don't.
This is 3 weeks in a row.
No, really, and here's the reason why, is because it's more of just a thank you, me and, if you don't mind me calling you Shelley.
That would be my name. Go right ahead.
You know, we were talking a little bit when she first got here, and I just want to thank her a lot for coming in. And we were talking a little bit about, you know, veterans issues and things of that nature, and I'm more just interested in being able to, I don't want to take up a lot of her time on me talking. It should be more about her, because I got, you know, just some questions as far as how Congress works and things of that nature. So that's about it.
I think a lot of people have questions about how Congress works right now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm not sure I could answer those.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Shelley Berkley, it's a pleasure to have you on
My
the show.
pleasure. Thank you.
Tell us about you.
About me. Well, as you know, after my service, I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, what do you do when you love public service but don't have an office to do public service with? Mm-hmm. So I sat on the couch for quite a while, feeling pretty sorry for myself and trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
I told you to fight back.
I ran the worst campaign on the planet, but that's a whole different story.
I said, Shelley, fight back, remember?
I know. Yes, I know. You were not alone, and shame on me. But that's beside the point. I honestly believe that things happen the way they're supposed to. Right. So I received this phone call out of the blue from Touro University, you know, saying, I knew they were looking for a new CEO because I knew my predecessor, and they asked if I'd be interested in the job. I thought they were joking because I have no academic medical background whatsoever, and I don't think being married to a doctor.
But you're a lawyer.
I'm a lawyer, but I'm not a doctor, and being married to a doctor, I don't think gives you the knowledge that you need to run a med school. But they offered me the job anyway, and I'll tell you this, and I'm probably older than you guys, but we're kind of contemporaries. The reason I took the job, and I didn't know whether I would last a week, that it was because it was something I had never done before. Right. And I thought at my age and my stage at life, I'd like to try something that is different and write a new chapter in my book of life. Yes. So I took it, and after the first week, I mean, the building was still standing, the students weren't rioting, the faculty didn't quit on me, and that was a little over 8 years ago. And it has been extraordinary. The school is doing great. We're educating the next generation of healthcare providers for the state. I feel like I'm doing something productive and useful, which is important to me. And I'm not in Washington right now, which is really not a bad place not to be. So I'm happy, and I'm home, and I'm working, and doing, I think, an important service for the people of Nevada, producing new doctors, new physical therapists, new occupational therapists, nurses, and physician assistants. And I look forward to going to work every day. And we're going back on Monday, full-time, live and in person. It's the first time in almost 2 years.
Without mask?
That's a good question, and I've been talking about that with my leadership team. I'm ready to get, you know, I've got this hanging on I've got my mask, Touro University, Nevada, my mask hanging on my neck. I am inclined to ditch the mask. I think what we're going to do in the first couple of weeks that we're in, that we're going to do the mask mandate and then hopefully get rid of it entirely. I'd like that, and I think my students and faculty would like that too.
Tell us about your years in Congress, because that's fascinating now, isn't it?
It's fascinating. I always wanted to do it.
And you'd probably still be a congresswoman if you really wanted.
I would be. And again, I miss being a congresswoman. I don't miss being in Washington, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, no,
I mean, I loved it, and I knew from the youngest time. You know my background. I'm the granddaughter of immigrants that came to this country, and they came to America to escape the Holocaust. They had to get out of Europe, or they would have been killed. Yeah. My mother's side of the family comes from Greece. The city they were from, Salonika, it was a port city. My grandfather worked on the docks. And that's what the Jews did in Salonika. There were 80,000 Jews before the war. By the time the Nazis finished, there were only 1,000.
Oh, geez.
So that they just wiped them out. And luckily, my grandparents came here. And my father's side of the family, the Russia-Poland border, there's nothing left. I mean, it was just a total wipeout. But we were here. And so I wanted to give something back to this country for having taken my family in. And not only did we survive, which we would not have done in Europe, but we thrived. And I mean, in 2 generations, we went from non-English speaking immigrants that didn't have a nickel to their name to having a granddaughter that was a member of the United States House of Representatives. How cool is that? Yeah. So I wanted to give something back to this country. I don't sing, I don't dance, I've got no particular talents, but I knew I could do public service. So I wanted to be in Congress from the youngest of ages, and I spent 14 years there and loved every minute of it. It was great.
So that's one thing that just to add real quick, it's not a question. That's one thing that I do try to explain to people, that it may be difficult to get there, but at least in this country, it is possible.
It's possible.
It's a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice, but it is possible. There is a pathway if you want it bad enough.
Look, my dad was a waiter on the Strip when I was growing up, and we were never without food. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we were destitute. We were solidly middle-class people. My father worked, my mother stayed home, and in my family, it didn't matter if you were pretty or popular. I, of course, was both. But it didn't matter. It mattered you got good grades, because neither one of my parents graduated high school. It mattered that you went to college. You were going to make something of yourself. And UNLV might as well have been Harvard for me. I mean, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and I was a big fish in a little pond. I realized that. But I was swimming upstream, and I did okay. And again, without UNLV, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And it's been a great school for both my sons. Sam graduated from the School of Hotel Administration, works for Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. And Max, as we talked about earlier, Max has been graduated from Boyd. And he has been with the Public Defender's Office for the last 10 years, ever since he got out of law school. And now he's running for Justice of the Peace. So I didn't
even know that was your son.
When you look at the poster, you'll say, oh, he looks like Shelley. Because he does. He looks like
I'm doing 25 miles an hour and I'm driving by.
But Steve, the first time
25,
I'm driving, and the first time I saw his sign, I practically drove off the road. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Yeah. And I can tell you without fear of contradiction, having your kid running is so much more nerve-wracking than running yourself. You know, I just did it and just did it. But now my kid, I'm a wreck. So anyway, that's kind of exciting.
So you were in Congress for 14 years.
Yes, 7 terms.
What would you tell these new up-and-coming candidates running for Congress? What would you say to them?
I would say that it's very important to do public service, and no matter what side of the aisle they're on, the fact that they are getting their feet wet and putting their name up, I think is commendable. And that's how I feel about it.
So compare your 7 terms in Congress
With now?
with now.
Ooh, okay, I'm going to give you a quick story, and it has to do with our veterans. As you know, it was my office.
And you're a champion for veterans' rights.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that. The VA hospital in North Las Vegas.
Which was your baby.
Was my baby. Now, people don't realize that. First of all, it was a multi-year task. You know, first we got the land, and then we had to get the planning money. And in the 2006 congressional budget, the VA hospital in North Las Vegas was the largest earmark, because they were still doing earmarks back then, largest earmark in the federal budget to build that thing. Now, what people...
How much?
Well, at the time it was $600 million, but that didn't include the $50 million for planning the year before and the purchase of the land the year before that. So it was huge. But I think it's a beautiful facility, and I'm so proud of it. But what people don't know, Steve, is I was working with a Republican administration and a Republican Congress when we passed that. That could not happen today. And how sad is that?
That's sad.
It is very sad. I remember I was on the Veteran Affairs Committee, and the VA Secretary, Anthony Principi, he appointment by Bush. He loved George Bush, and I grabbed a hold of him and I said, I need a VA hospital, and he came to Vegas. He worked with us, and he helped make that happen. Republican administration, Republican Congress, and a Democratic Congresswoman in a Democratic district got that VA hospital.
So what do you think the disconnect is?
You know, I have a hard time, and that harkens back to my background. I mean, I am so grateful for this country. I'm alive, and now there are generations after me in my family. I don't understand the anger and the hatred that is bubbling up. It is so destructive for our country. I mean, look, I don't like the far left, and I don't like the far right. I mean,
you and I both.
As far as I'm concerned,
Radicals, they're radical.
Either side, you know, I'm not defending the radicals, or radical's a good word, on the Democratic side. They don't like me. I don't like them. I'm looking for, you know,
stability.
Stability.
Yeah, I've always said if you're a little right of center, I can deal with you. If you're a little left of center, I can deal with you. When you start getting into, and this is going way back, when you start becoming Jesse Helms on the far right,
we are going back.
I have an issue.
He's a political junkie.
Yeah, if you're you know, if you're too far to the left, the same exact thing. Like if you're a Jesse Jackson, I'm going all the way back to 88.
Jesse Jackson.
If you're a Jesse Jackson, you're too far left. If you're a Jesse Helms, you're too far right. If you're somewhere in that middle, I can work with you.
I mean, I can look, when I married my husband, Dr. Larry, he was a Heritage Foundation Republican. You know, okay. And, you know, we found common ground in so many other things. And the longer we dated, the more we found we had more in common than not in common. But even then, you know, I used to tell people I had a bipartisan marriage, and I did. And again, and it was very easy to understand. I take a very broad view of the Constitution. If it's not prohibited, it's okay. My husband took a very restricted view of the Constitution. If it doesn't explicitly give the authority to the feds, you can't do it. That's pretty different. But on the other hand, I mean, we have a wonderful marriage. So
how long have you guys been married now?
Well over 20 years now.
Okay.
I know. I started dating Larry. I was fixed up with him. At the beginning of my first congressional race, so like 1997, we started dating, and so Yeah, and it worked. It worked. So I'm very, very, that was one of my smarter decisions. Yeah, getting married.
Getting married.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Biden versus Trump. What do you think about that whole presidential
look?
Change of hands.
Well, obviously, I am not a Trump supporter. Biden, has he done everything right?
You know him personally,
no,
right?
I do know him personally. I would not overstate. You know, I listen to a lot of politicians, my very good friend and my very dear friend. I don't want to overstate this, but he was in Washington a very long time. And the 14 years that I was there, I got to know him. He is a nice guy. And I think he is working hard. And there are huge issues in this country that COVID certainly did not help. But again, rather than hate, you know, and I hear people say the most outrageous things, just, you know, like him, don't vote for him in 2024. That's the beauty of American politics. Every 2 years we have another election. You don't like somebody, vote him out. But this continuing reliving of the last election, I think it's bad for the country, and I wish we would stop. Acknowledge Biden is the president. You liked him? No. You didn't like him? No. Let him do his job. You don't like him in 2 years? Get rid of him. Yeah. Don't vote for him.
Exactly. But people overcomplicate it, and
we are beating a dead horse here.
Yeah, and
it's not worth it.
And here's the thing for me. I've, you know, like Steve said, I'm a political junkie. So I remember, like, I've listened to so many of Biden's speeches over the years through his career, not just presently. And I've always found him, he's always come across as a very intelligent person. I just think that I supported a lot of Trump's policies, but some of those Twitter comments and stuff, it was just enough. And I just think that, like, Biden, I think we need to stop, and I apologize for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think we need to stop electing some of these individuals that have been in office that long.
Oh, you mean, well, look, you had a newcomer, Trump, that I didn't like, and we have someone that's been there for the majority of his life that you're not crazy about. It's okay. In 2024, we have a chance to change it.
I heard you running for president 2024.
No, you heard so wrong. I will tell you what I'm thinking of doing, and I haven't made the decision yet. When Carolyn Goodman, our mayor, is done being mayor, I am thinking of running for mayor.
I did hear about that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did.
And I
was making fun about the president, though.
Oh, well, no. But it's always been a desire of mine to be mayor. And as long as I'm healthy, which I am, and able to do the job, then I think I'll throw my hat in the ring.
When is she up?
Not till November of 24. Because remember, Steve,
they gave them another year.
Bingo. They gave him another year. More than a year and a half, actually, because as you remember, municipal elections were in the spring. So you had to get to November and then an extra year.
Well, I appreciate, and see, that's another thing, too. Like, I'm not going to say I agree with every one of your votes when you were in Congress.
I don't agree with every one of my votes.
But I'm going to tell you honestly, like, that's most people wouldn't say something like that on the show. Like, honestly, that's the one thing I like about you is how honest you are, and I still.
Well, she's very honest.
God.
and I still, but that honestly, that's unique for somebody who's held political office.
A long time, because when you add up all my offices, I won my first election in November of '82, and I finished in Congress in January of 2013. That's a 30-year period.
When were you in the Assembly?
1983.
Okay.
Because I had Max at the end of May of '82, and I won my first election in November of '82. And then Max and I went back and forth to the legislature. I don't think I slept that year, but I did it because I had a passion for public service. I wanted to do it, so I did.
Let's talk about the Reed International Airport. What do you think about that?
Look, I was McCarran. Well, let me back up a little bit to something I'm sure you don't know because it never went anywhere. McCarran was a pretty hateful guy. Now, and he has. Nevada has 2 statues in the Capitol. Every state is given 2 statues in the Capitol. We had Sarah Winnemucca and Senator McCarran. While I was in Congress, I started talking about taking down the McCarran statue. And it had absolutely no traction whatsoever. I learned that the legislature has to make that decision. And frankly, I was too busy in Congress to make that a big cause. So McCarran stayed on. When I learned that there was a movement to change the name of the airport from McCarran to Reed, at first I wasn't overwhelmed by the idea. You know, I said, why change it?
Why not Berkeley? Berkeley has a ring to it.
Well, I have to say, I think Reed really supplants me when it comes to years of service. And so I haven't been there since it was named, so I haven't seen any signs. But I am pleased that the McCarran name came off, and I am very happy that Senator Reed was honored with a huge distinction. Oh my gosh, I don't think it can get better than that.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Is like I didn't agree with some of the stuff that Senator Reed did, but I'm gonna
commitment to service.
I'm gonna have to. I'll probably get some feedback on this one, but I gotta give him. Some recognition. I went through a situation in 2004. My dad was, unfortunately, he was terminal cancer patient. And something to do with his the way his taxes were filed, he owed like a $300 penalty, something to do with disability. So anyway, well, back then, I just said, okay, fine. So I went online, and I paid it online, and I thought everything was good. Well, then come to find out, I get a letter like 2 weeks later, and they said, hey, you still owe this. So I made a phone call, and I'm like, no, I paid it online. And they're like, no, you can't pay this online. I was like, well, there was no disclaimer or anything on there. I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I called Senator Reed's office. And in 2 days, I got a personal phone call back from Senator Reed.
Whoa.
And
That's impressive.
he was able to, he said, it's been paid, and squash it right there.
Oh, that's great. He had extraordinary power. And I came to realize when I was serving, because obviously he was either minority leader or majority leader when I was serving, that I came to believe and do to this day that he was more powerful than the President of the United States when he was majority leader. And a lot of his efforts were focused on bringing home the bacon to Nevada. Yeah. I mean, there's not much here, and he brought in a lot. And so I really appreciate that. Look, when I was a high school senior at Valley High School, there were 2 young guys running.
Oh, you graduated from Valley?
I did.
Oh, see, we were doing good.
Oh, no. Why?
Because I graduated from Clark.
Oh, I was part of
We're sister schools, though. We were built the same year, yeah.
I was part of the first graduating class at Valley. Nice. And 50 years later, the 50th anniversary, I gave the commencement address. It was really great. Yeah. But anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I actually hired the Valley High School marching band when Berkeley Elementary School was, dare I say, christened. I invited the Valley High School marching band to come and perform at the opening of Berkeley Elementary. That was way cool. And it just shows tremendous continuity. I mean, I've lived here a long time. Oh, my goodness. And so when we first moved to town, there were 80,000 people in the Las Vegas Valley. 80,000, early 60s. And now, of course, there's over 2.5 million in the same area.
I came here with about 865,000
And even that is just extraordinary. For many years, during my time in Congress, my congressional district was the fastest growing congressional district in the United States. We had 5,000 to 7,000 new people every month coming into town. That was before 2008 when everything crashed.
Yeah, that was unfortunate.
Yeah, it was bad.
What do you think about Afghanistan?
Afghanistan exit was horrible. Horrible. Am I glad that we're finally out? Yes. Do I think the exit should have been and could have been better? Could have been executed better? Yeah, absolutely. It was tremendous turmoil. It reminded me, I'm old enough to remember Vietnam. I was in high school.
You visited countries while you were in Congress.
I visited a lot of, because I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I chaired the Transatlantic Dialogue, which was an ongoing discussion. When I was there, it had been going on for well over 40 years. I'm assuming it still exists. It meet twice a year with our European counterparts. Each one of the European countries in the EU was represented, and there were about 13 members of Congress. We met twice a year, once in the United States, once wherever. The European Union changes presidencies every 6 months. And so, so whoever had the presidency of the EU at the time we were meeting, that's the country we met. So I was in
So you know where I'm going, right?
Tell me.
You know where I'm going.
Tell me before I answer something that was not even asked.
Ukraine. If you were still in Congress, what type of advice would you give the president?
Short of sending American troops to Ukraine, you give him everything you got. I do not trust Putin. I do think, and he's been very transparent. It's not like I'm putting words in his mouth. He thinks the worst day in history for Russia. I mean, forget the Tsar, forget the Bolshevik revolution, forget Stalin's starving 25 million Russians to death in the famine after World War II. Forget all that. He thinks the worst day for Russia was when all of the breakaway republics broke away. And he would like very much to reestablish the empire. The empire is Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Kazakhstan,
He's got a lot
Ukraine.
Of work to do.
He does, but he would like to start with Ukraine. Now, whether or not that turns out to be a big mistake on his part, that I don't know yet. But shame on him for going into another country and killing civilians and trying to take over a country that does not wish to be taken over. And so I hope I have to say I admire them. They're fighting in the streets with, I listened to one interview today with a man that if he had to use a kitchen knife to defend his homeland against the Russians, he would do it. And I thought, good heavens, what resolve these people have. And Zelensky, the president, he's not going anywhere. I mean, he could be out of there in a heartbeat. And as you know, America offered to get him out. I'm not moving. I'm here, and I'll be fighting in the streets with my countrymen. And the Russians are not going to take over Ukraine. And good for him. Good for them. I mean, they're fighting for their freedom.
So long term, what do you think is going to happen with this situation?
This might be one of the few times that I have enough faith in NATO and the United States that Putin might come to regret that he made this move. I don't think it's in the best interest of Russia, and I certainly don't think it's in the best interest of the Europeans, and certainly not in the best interest of the Ukrainians. So he might have opened up a really big can of worms that might be a little bit too big for him to handle.
Well, one of the things that, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the things about the Ukraine situation that's interesting is, I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you, since the Soviet Union fell. Okay, I don't understand why we've tried to expand NATO to begin with. I don't have. Okay, well that's why I'm asking. I'm not an expert on it. You know way more than I do. I'm just picking your brain. You're smarter than I am.
Well,
trust
I don't
me.
know smarter, but I did this a little bit in Congress. Look, they are asking. And a few of the countries, when I was in Congress, I visited Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. It was April. It was still cold there. It's a cold part of the world. And they were practically begging. I was part of a congressional delegation. They were begging us. We want to be with you. We want to be part of the West. We don't want to fall under Russian control again. We are asking you for help. And especially in Estonia, what they were telling us is whenever they disagreed with Russia, if at the United Nations or someplace else, that whole part of the world is dependent on Russia for oil and gas, for heating, for anything they need. Any energy need comes from Russia. And they told us quite vividly, and it, again, April and very cold, that whenever they disagreed with Russia, whenever they didn't do what Russia told them to do, Russia would turn off the spigot. And and this was particularly in Estonia. They said that they're at their mercy, and they don't want to be at their mercy. They want to be with the West. Now, when you have a country that wants to be your friend, that wants to be your ally, and wants to be with you, you bring them into NATO, because that's where they could be most effective. Now, the Ukrainians, I suspect that's a tough one for NATO. Why? It's right on the border with Russia. Yeah. Russia, I think, has Putin legitimately feels, this is his good faith belief, that he can't have NATO at his border.
Yeah.
And so he is hell-bent on keeping the Ukrainian country, Ukraine, from becoming a member of NATO, because he feels that's an existential threat to Russia.
Yep.
So that, coupled with his belief that all of these countries should come back under the umbrella of Russia to reconstitute the Soviet Empire, those two issues are what I believe are compelling him. I think he did not realize and did not fully appreciate the Ukrainians' desire for freedom and not to be a part of Russia again. They like their independence, they like their democracy, and his excuse for it with the neo-Nazi, I'm going to protect them from the neo-Nazis. Yeah. The president of Ukraine is Jewish. Zelensky's Jewish. Yeah. What is he protecting him from the neo-Nazis? It's either his parents or his grandparents are Holocaust survivors.
Wow.
You're telling him you're protecting him from the Nazis? Are you kidding me? The guy is Jewish, and his grandparents were in the concentration camps. So that does not hold water. So come up with a better excuse, because you just invaded your next door neighbor.
Yeah.
So instead of oil, why don't they use electricity to heat their homes?
Well, they need the power from someplace, and they can't get it unless they get it from the Russians. They don't have the power grid for that. They've got the pipelines. Okay. They need that oil, and they need that gas, and it comes from Russia, and it makes them extremely vulnerable. And so anyway, that's why they are anxious to be a part of NATO. and they're anxious to be a part of the West.
I remember the last time you were on the program. This was like several years ago.
I actually remember that.
Right. I think we were at KLAV back then.
Yeah, it was upstairs.
Yeah, KLAV. Yeah. And we wanted you to talk about your time in politics, and you were talking about Touro University.
Yes. Yeah, we want to talk about that.
Here you go. Let's talk about Touro University.
Thank you. So I've been there over 8 years now. It is an extraordinary institution, and I'm going to give you some numbers, Steve and Jim, about this.
I toured your place. I toured Touro with the
yes,
cadavers.
You wouldn't recognize it now. You
Okay.
would not recognize it because the city of Henderson gave us an economic development bond which enabled us to build out. There's no more warehouse. It's all built out. And you know that was a cavernous warehouse. No more.
Yeah,
all
there was
built.
a whole bunch of dead bodies in the room.
Oh, well, there still are. There's more dead bodies, actually. I'm a great believer that if you have a medical school, that if anyone is ever going to operate on me, I want them to see the inside of someone else first. I'm a great believer in cadavers. And as long as I'm at Touro, because now they have all these virtual things, and you could, it's a tabletop, and you could, there's a make-believe dead person, and you can...
How is there a make-believe dead person? They're dead or not?
Well, they don't exist. It's all virtual.
Virtual.
But you're dissecting them.
Right,
I mean, how do you dissect a virtual corpse?
Yeah, the first time you see a godiver, because I haven't even told Steve this.
I have people that faint in there.
No, trust me, I almost did my lab class, because when I started out with pre-med, because I wanted to be a physical therapist.
Just the smell.
Yeah, I almost passed out.
You are not alone, my friend. Jeez. All right, I had 4,200 applications for 180 slots in the med school. 4,200 for 180 slots. We can be extremely selective of who we admit into our school. And if we admit you, you're going to graduate because you are smart enough. You just beat out 4,000 other people to get a slot.
What do you look for on those applications?
The MCAT score is still a tremendous factor, and our MCAT scores are soaring, of course, and GPA is important. Although we don't favor them, we look favorably on a Nevadan that's applying, and we know they're going to stay here because we have a tremendous crisis in number of physicians that we have. We are educating the next generation of healthcare providers for the state.
Very cool.
Our physical therapy program, we just went from 60 to 80 students that we admit. We have, last year we had 2,400 applications for 80 slots. Physical therapy, I know you were interested in that. Physical therapy, we admit 40. It's a doctorate. It's a very intense program. All our programs are professional level. We had 10 times as many, about 400 applications for 40 slots. Occupational therapy, we admit 36. We have about 10 times as many. Master of Health Science program. It's a 1-year intense science program. You could either use it to become a science teacher, or a lot of our students in our medical school and PA program come from the Master of Health Science, and I'll tell you why. Especially when I first got there, we had a lot of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan applying for admission. They were medics. They could practice medicine with the best of them. They don't have a science degree. Exactly. They didn't have a science background, which they need to go to medical school. They took the 1 year of health sciences. And when they had that in their resume, then we were able to get them into either the PA program, which a lot of my veterans want to go into, or the DO program, the medical school. So that we're very proud of that. In addition to that, I've got 3 mobile clinics that, not since COVID, we had to stop, but going to Opportunity Village, down to Shade Tree for the domestic violence issues. going to partnership with Nevada Hand. Our students go to their assisted living and independent living places and our residency programs. And they, along with faculty supervision, because you can't just send the students out, they provide basic health care for these disadvantaged people. And so we're very proud of that. My students love street medicine. They want to be out on the streets. They want to help those people that don't have access to health care. And during the pandemic, we were the first ones down at Cashman Field to do the testing of the homeless. We administered about 20,000 vaccines throughout the valley. My students were helping little ones that were having trouble learning on their computers. They were tutoring them. And they were providing running errands for seniors that couldn't get out of the house. And so my students really, really got into helping their fellow man during the COVID crisis. So very, very proud of them. And I've got my autism center, which you probably remember. Oh, I'm actually wearing, this is, yes, that's a insignia for autism, a puzzle piece, because these kids have trouble with that. Before COVID, we had 535 patient visits a month. Then we had to close the facility. We're just getting up and started again. I'm very, very excited to tell people that the ambassador from the Middle Eastern country of Qatar made a donation of $3 million to the Touro Autism Center, so that no child in Southern Nevada that cannot afford, that's autistic and cannot afford our services, they come for free. Wow. And that's a gift from the oil-rich Middle Eastern country of Qatar. And just how lucky we are to have that. And then I've got our medical clinic, and prior to COVID...
You still go back and forth to California, right?
Just starting. As a matter of fact, I'm going tomorroh night, so I can be on campus. Because every time I call you, you'll be like, oh, I'm going on a plane to California. Yes, it's true. I spent, before COVID, that's, unfortunately, that's what it was. I would spend Mondays and Tuesdays in California, come home Wednesday, go right from the airport to the Nevada school. Once COVID hit, and it was March, I was, my regular Monday, my provost in California said, don't come in, because Northern California shut down first. They said, there's no students here. Don't come in. We're in the middle of starting a pandemic. Yeah. So I didn't go for over a year and a half. Wow. Now I'm first starting to go back, and I'll be there. Those travel miles back up. I have enough. I have enough. But yeah, so I'm starting to go back now. And again, tomorrow night I'll be in Vallejo, California, where the school's located. I should go over there and have dinner with you. You're welcome, although we'd have to go to Napa Valley because there's not too much in Vallejo. Okay. I'm not quite sure where I would take you to dinner in Vallejo, but it's about 25 minutes from Napa. And tell us about your son, the one that's running for Justice of the Peace. Max. Max is just a lovely fellow, and I'd like to take credit for it, but he really came out that way. Now, my second one took some doing. But Max... he takes after Dad, or he takes after you? I think he's got the best of both of us. Okay. He's a very caring fellow, and he listens. And I think if you have a mother like me, who is always talking, that you either have to compete with her by talking or start listening. And Max was a listener. And that, I think, is a very, very good characteristic for a judge. You must be real proud of him running for Justice of the Peace. I'm just plain proud of him. And he's had two, he was home a lot during COVID. I have had 3 grandchildren in the last 15 months. And 2 of them, Max and his wife, Kelly, produced. So we have thank you. We have a 16-month-old by the name of AJ, and a 1-month-old, less than a month, by the name of Teddy. And so I've got 2 grandsons by him, and my son Sam had a little baby, Georgie, named after my father. Teddy is named after my mother-in-law, and everybody is happy and healthy and working hard. And my daughter-in-law, Max's wife, and this is so much of who they are. She teaches 3- and 4-year-old deaf children in the Clark County School District.
That's got to be difficult.
And can you imagine trying to do that virtually? Cannot be done. Cannot be done.
I'm gonna ask you one last question, because this might take a minute for you to answer. I just want your suggestion on it. So we hear a lot about term limits. There's a lot of people that support term limits.
We're back to Congress again.
So, yeah, some people that don't. Just real quick, because I wanted to touch on this.
I can answer this quickly.
I understand the point that a lot of people are saying, hey, we already have them. Like, if you don't like them, vote them out, right? But this is specifically to do with Congress. I think Congress should be upped to 4-year terms instead of 2. And here's my rationale for that.
Hey, as a former congresswoman, I couldn't agree more.
And the reason why is because
that was tough every
but then he's
2
got
years.
term limits on it, though.
But I would cut the Senate down to 4 as well, and then rotate it the same way the Senate does. And just real quick, the reason why is because I don't think it is fair to Congress people to have to basically be campaigning constantly.
Same with Assembly.
You're not going to get any argument from me. And I have to tell you, Jim, and I don't know whether people fully appreciate this. Okay, it's election night. I am wherever the Democrats are, if we're at Caesars or MGM's.
Wherever the Democrats are. You're not at Red Rock.
Yeah, big party.
She's not at Red Rock.
That's funny. Although that's my neighborhood casino, I have to say. But you know, wherever we were celebrating and everybody came to celebrate, right. Yeah, Republicans were over at the Venetian, the Democrats were either at the MGM or Caesars, have a wonderful time, get home around midnight, go to sleep. 10 o'clock the next morning, my entire staff is sitting around my kitchen table figuring out how I'm going to win the next election. That's 10 hours after I won. Yeah. Yeah. Why? It's only 2 years away. Yep. And with being in Washington all week long and then coming home on the weekends, what do I have to do to get reelected in 2 years? And so I'm not going to disagree but I do disagree with the term limits, and I do believe that the American people are smart enough. If they don't like somebody, they vote them out. And if they don't, well, then they got him again for another 2 years.
Nobody wanted to run against you, Congresswoman Berkley.
They managed to run. I always had a race. I started doing better as time went on. I only won my first race. I only won by 3 points. And then my second race, a little bit more. And then I was in pretty good shape. But it took a few elections after I got elected. And it's so funny when you walk in to your office. All right, you're elected, you go back for freshman orientation. And so I'm there at freshman orientation, and that's when you pick your office. And as a freshman, you don't get much picking. It's whatever's left. And, you know, so you're picking out the drapes, and you can either do red or blue. And the carpet, it could be red or blue. And some of the old furniture that they're moving in. And you look around, and you're also hiring people at the same time, and you know nothing about DC, and you think, how did I manage to fool all those people back home so that they actually think I can do this job? They're nuts, and I can't do this job. And then you get through your first term, and you go back after the election, and you walk in, and your office is humming along, and all your staff is working, and they're coming up to you and say, you know, do you want to sign on to this bill? Do you want to do this? And then you sit down at your desk, and you know, that's when the first time after my first re-election that I felt like I was a congresswoman. I said, I can do this job, and I'm doing it pretty darn well. But it took those 2 years as a freshman to really get my feet wet and to finally feel secure once I won that first re-election. I said, I'm here. I'm a congresswoman.
Do you remember when we first met in 2004, I think it was?
I do remember the first time.
My dress blue uniform.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, gave you the endorsement from Veterans in Politics.
Yes, I did.
You and
I only missed one, and I'll tell you, I was up in Elko talking to, I think probably the Democratic state or county party up there. Not that anyone in Elko would vote for me, but that's beside the point. So I was in Elko, and you have a rule that if you don't interview on the day, I don't know if you still have that, but if you don't interview when we call you or when we're doing interviews, you cannot get an endorsement. And I was up in Elko and I couldn't be down there. But that was, I think, the only year that I missed.
You and I had our ups and downs.
Oh, yes, we did. We did.
But we somehow found how to circle back.
I agree with you. Yes, absolutely.
We did. And I truly, truly respect you for that.
Well, that goes both ways.
Yeah, you don't seem to hold a grudge. You hold it for a little bit and then you let it go.
I held it for a little bit. I was really mad at you. But
you were mad at me so much you made the paper.
That I don't remember, but I'm not surprised. You know what? I'm a great... Also, the older I got, the more I realize of putting things in perspective. I mean, what's important in life? Is it really worth, how do I benefit in a mental way, an emotional way by holding this grudge? I got bigger fish to fry, and there's more important problems in the world. And then you just let it go. And you feel better about it. I mean, it's good. Look, we could sit, we could talk, and I value that very much.
So do I.
It doesn't make any sense.
And I could pick up the phone and call you anytime.
Yes.
Except for 3 in, Hillary Clinton.
Thank you. I don't want to be up at 3.
So, Shelley Berkley, you said you were thinking about running for Las Vegas City Mayor in 2024. I like to see you do that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'd like to see how that's going to turn out.
I'm getting, I have to tell you, and I'm not.
Did you seek Caroline's endorsement?
I don't think I would ask for it. I would think it would put her in an awkward position. Gotcha. And we have known each other. I mean, when I was a kid at Temple Beth Shalom, and in those days there was only one synagogue in town, Oscar was president of the synagogue. So we go way, way back. And I think they have, done amazing things in the city of Las Vegas. I think Oscar is Oscar. He's just, amazing guy. Carolyn is now in her 3rd term, and I will not make the decision for sure. Although I have to tell you, Steve, people have been very generous in their offers of support. And I tell everybody, first, Matt, I don't want to interfere with my son's election. That's the last thing people need is a buzz. Number 2, I don't think anybody deserves a 3-year campaign. I mean, people are tired of elections. They're tired of politicians. I don't want to start running now. I think that's crazy. I'll wait till after the election. And a 3rd, I just want to make sure.
You got all of next year to do it.
And that's what I said. You know what? If I have a lot of name recognition in the community, it's not like I'll be introducing myself. I was in office for 30 years. People know my name. So I don't have to worry about that. And if I decide to do it, I'll get in with both feet and run as strong a campaign as I can.
And you got your goddaughter in, what's her name? Harmony Letizia.
Oh, Harmony. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know you were her godmother.
Her mother and I have known each other since we were preteens. I think Marla was 12 and I was 14 when we first met. Yeah. And we have been very close friends ever since. And we were pregnant together. Max is a little younger than Harmony, but we were both pregnant together, and we have an awful lot of history.
At least we know who's going to run her campaign if she runs for mayor.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he worked. Yeah, Tom is, and Tom is very good at what he does. Yeah. He handles a lot of judge races and a lot of municipal races. So He does
Well,
that.
we're running out of time.
How is that possible?
Berkley.
How is that possible?
And it's always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Well, thanks for inviting me to come on, and I'm really glad to hear that the Valentine's Gala went well.
It went great. There was a little over 100 people
That's
there.
good.
And thank you so much for your support as well.
I'm always here for the vets.
Yeah, when we were at that event, that's the first thing I said. And thank you for allowing me to take a picture with you.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, I was like, do you mind if I get a picture with you? And you're like, oh, it'd be my pleasure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay,
That sounds
cool.
like me. I love that. And even, this is so crazy, the other day I was at Bagel Cafe. And
The one over on West Cliff in Buffalo?
yes. And I walked by Savos has lots and lots of pictures. And there's my picture on the wall. I love that. And then Bagel Mania, which recently opened up and is just fabulous too. I got a phone call from somebody. No, I know who it is, but I won't mention his name. And he said, I'm here with my family and we see your picture on the wall. I said, oh, that's so good. I really like that.
Nice.
So,
Shelley.
thank you for letting me take a picture with you.
Shelley,
Steve.
did we cover everything you like to be covered?
Yes, and thank you for letting me talk a little bit about Touro. I appreciate it.
Shelley Berkley.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a pollywog, so, when I got someone who served in Congress, I'm going to ask this question.
Yeah.
Like, just for my knowledge.
Could you look in the camera and just say whatever you want, close it out, and a point of contact if you'd like to give one.
Oh, great. This is Shelley Berkley thanking our hosts, Steve and Jim, for this interview. It was comprehensive, it was fun, and I look forward to coming back. And I have no contact information whatsoever to offer anyone. If you need to get a hold of me, and it's for a good reason, call Touro University and they'll get the message to me. Take care, and thanks for having me.
Shelley Berkley, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for coming on the program. Folks, that's Shelley Berkley, former United States Congresswoman and CEO for Touro University, and possibly a mayor candidate in 2004 for the city of Las Vegas. This is Steve Sanderson, Jim Jonas for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.